Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Dawn Nickel and I'm one of the founders of She Recovers along with my daughter Taryn Strong, and I'm delighted that you're able to join us here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about our foundation and then I'll introduce our very special guest today, Shari Hampton. Our She Recovers Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit public charity. We connect, support, and empower women through our virtual platforms and in-person community networks. If you feel inspired to become a supporter, please visit www.sherecovers.org. Okay, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to my friend Shari Hampton. And I'm going to read from her bio on her beautiful website, which is www.shari.hampton.com. So in February 15th, 2015, Shari decided that she would leave behind over 35 years of drug and alcohol abuse to get sober. That abuse included decades of failed attempts at 12-step recovery, two DUIs, 1 D felony, and 2 long-term behavior modification programs, 3 intensive outpatient programs, and 1 hospitalization. The success of Shari's complete detox was a result of her work with renowned retired psychiatrist William H. Greer. Using a combination of a raw diet, a host of supplements, psychoanalysis, and holistic modalities, Shari found her path to sobriety and full recovery. Her journey is the foundation of her work as a life and recovery coach and also now a consultant. In 2020, Shari decided to further her work with women and people who are struggling to find their sobriety by completing her certification through the International Association of Professional Recovery Coaches, IAPRC. Shari is also a She Recovers coach. As your coach, Shari is committed to shining a light on the many pathways you can take to sobriety. She knows the struggles you face because she has faced many of them herself. She knows that you have the power to rise above your addiction. You can face whatever lies in front of you, and she wants to help you as you do. Again, if you want more information about Shari and her coaching services, please check her out at www.sharihampton.com. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about her consulting services towards the end of this session. So, Shari, I met Shari on Instagram, I think maybe Facebook, although she's on Instagram as I am Shari Hampton, as well as Served Up Sober. So Shari is the founder of Served Up Sober, an organization out of San Diego. And I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about Served because she just does it so beautifully. But I met her on Instagram, and it was either late 2017 or into 2018, and we finally met in person at She Recovers in LA. And I just kind of fell in absolute love with her. Shari's real. I mean, she's just about as real as you can get. And we started having conversations at that time about her path and what she was doing. And She Recovers has always supported Served Up Sober. Shari was a speaker at our Creating Connections event in San Diego last November, where she spoke about pivoting. And I mean, who knew how much pivoting we would all have to do in 2020? So hearing Shari talk about pivoting at the end of 2019 was a good kind of indicator for us. And she could sit here and talk just about pivoting with us. We love that talk as well. But today she's going to talk about redefining vulnerability.
Well, hello, everyone. This is definitely being vulnerable. I mean, I'm looking at the tiles. How many tiles are across here? 5 down, 5 across, 3 pages. And so I'm feeling extremely vulnerable. And, you know, I thought that I would just sit with it just to encourage other people that they can sit with it. And then I came across this post today, and so I think I'm gonna start with this. This is from The Humble Poet. And he or she says today, everyone I talk to has found some level of clarity in 2020. How ironic, 2020 vision, clarity, you get it. The world paused long enough for us to look around and ask, is this how it should be for me? It's hard to unplug from a life where everything is familiar and certain, so we avoid doing it. But then the whole planet is flipped on its head, and it has us wondering, if I could survive this much change, what else am I capable of? When I started Served Up Sober, I guess almost 4 years ago, I was just getting sober. I'd been sober maybe 9 or 10 months. And I was coming out of a stage of arrogance. I think a lot of us, when we are in the throes of whatever we're in the throes of, we have a sense of arrogance about us. We like to tell other people what's best for them. We kind of out there being our wild selves, so to speak. And when I came into sobriety, I was super, super, super broken. And my recovery journey started from a place of vulnerability. One of the things that I realized early on is that in order for me to truly do something meaningful with Served, I would have to get naked. And I mean butt naked, not halfway naked, not sometimes naked, but I would have to truly be naked in order to make a difference. And so I began looking at vulnerability as a new sense of arrogance in a way, because I think that in order to truly, truly, truly get to a position where you can stand naked in front of other people and not have any feeling about doing that, it kind of is arrogant in a way, right? Because basically what you're saying is, I really don't care how you react to what I'm doing. I really don't care about your judgment. I really can sit with not being liked. And to me, that kind of gave me power, right? I felt a certain type of empowerment with that amount of vulnerability. So I think even though we're going through this time of change and uncertainty and just feelings of sometimes feeling lost, feeling afraid, feeling like what's the next day gonna look like? It's okay to be vulnerable. Like, it's okay to really show up as ourselves. And like I said, there's about 65 people on the call. And I know that not all of you feel comfortable talking, or else these calls would be 4 hours long, right? There's a lot of people that don't show up because they don't quite know how to be vulnerable. I think that one of the challenges about being vulnerable with other people is that we have a hard time being vulnerable with ourselves. I mean, when's the last time you looked in the mirror and said, you know, Shari or Dawn or Lisa, when's the last time we just said, you know, I just love you. You know, I just love you so much. When is the last time you were able to stand in front of your own reflection and recognize who you are? Right? That's probably one of the reasons why we struggle with being vulnerable. Because to be vulnerable, I think, is to really first recognize who you truly are. And when you do that, you give yourself permission to be your highest self. That's what vulnerability is all about. It's about recognizing that the closer you come to being who you are, the closer you become for being your highest self. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge to get that close to what we were meant to be, who we were meant to be, how we're supposed to travel through this life. It's difficult, but it's possible. When I think about pivoting, and Dawn talked about it a little bit, it's one of my favorite words. And I can tell you a little story. I had this job. I'd had it for about a decade. And when I first got into recovery, I had something to prove. I think a lot of us, when we first decide that we're going to embark on this journey, we have something to prove, either at work or to our families, our friends. We're like, I can prove that I can do this thing. And so at work, I'd been on this job for about a decade. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to prove to them that I'm fantastic. I mean, I was going to work on Mondays. Who knew how that could change things? I was actually showing up on Mondays and Fridays and actually working an 8-hour day. And I felt like, you know what, damn it, I think I can do this. I think that I can really be good at doing this. But the more I started working with Served and recognizing that I really, really, really wanted to do that full time, I got to a crossroads. My job was demanding probably 50 hours a week for me. And I recognized that I just couldn't do both. And I was like, damn it, this is nagging at me. I'm having dreams about it. The job started getting difficult. The boss started getting picky. My relationship started to be more of a challenge. And there was just this nagging voice that kept saying, you should be doing something different. You should be moving in a different direction. I was able to pivot, and pivot, let's talk about pivoting for a minute, because pivot doesn't necessarily mean that you're changing your direction, because you can change your direction and not go anywhere. You know what I mean? You've seen hamsters in a cage that are running, but they're still in a cage. I mean, they're not moving. You see escalators in buildings, but they're still in a building, right? And so pivoting doesn't actually mean that you're going anywhere. In order to actually move, you have to start walking in the direction of the intention that you've set. Or else you've just set an intention and you're just planning on it and you're just talking about it. And let's be clear, talking is not doing. It feels like doing because it takes the same amount of energy, right? But you can be talking about something and planning about something, and it's not the same as doing something. And so when I recognized that I needed to pivot from this job, basically I quit. I had to do something that proved that I'm going to trust my intuition. I'm going to trust that I'm moving in the direction of what I intend to happen in my life. And I'm going to give you some examples because I'm hoping that you will think of some examples in your life. And this is going to sound kind of silly, but if I was talking to somebody that wanted to be a chef, then I expect for there to be some crumbs somewhere on their shirt because they're trying recipes. They're in the kitchen. You can't say to me that I want to be a chef and there's no indication that you're in the kitchen chefing, right? You can talk about it, but you should be doing something. If I decided that I wanted to play basketball years ago, everywhere I went, I had a basketball with me. Even before I knew how to play, because I had the intention that that's what I wanted to achieve. And so if you want to open up a cupcake business, you should be writing cupcake recipes on napkins even. If you want to travel somewhere, you should be pulling out those postcards, those maps of the cities, learning the language. It's all about walking in the direction of what you intend to happen. And so I quit. And I quit for several reasons. First of all, I recognize that when you get these nagging messages, it's almost as close as you can get to a divine conversation. And I've talked about that before. For those of you that are maybe not sleeping at night, or maybe getting the same words that are popping up, maybe the same messages from different people. It's like the divine is trying to get your attention. I mean, if you were in a bathroom with a foggy window and all of a sudden this sentence starts showing up, I mean, you'd be scared to death, right? There is no other way for you to get the messages other than those nagging thoughts, those dreams, those times when you can pause and hear what you're thinking. And that's what pivoting is all about. It's about recognizing that those messages that you get are probably from your creator, the creator of your understanding. If I could leave you with anything, I would leave you with this. Remember, planning is not doing. Talking about a thing is not actually doing the thing, even though it feels like the thing, because it takes the same amount of energy. When we give ourselves permission to pursue our desires, not just plan for what we want, but actually do what we want, that's when we experience true growth. So what I thought we would do, and I don't know how vulnerable you want to get, right? I'm hoping that you would want to get a little bit vulnerable. Talk about some of the things, and you can either put it in the chat or you can just write it down. Some of those things that you have been thinking about, things that have been nagging you, and it can be something as drastic as a relationship that you need to kick to the curb. It's like, you got to go. It could be a city that you've been wanting to live in. It could be a job that it's time to let go of so you can pursue a passion. But I would just encourage you to write it down. You can put it in the chat. You can put it in your journal. But stop talking about it and start doing something with it. I do it every day, and it just allows me to walk in the direction of what I'm intending to do. I know with Dawn, when I first saw what She Recovers was doing, I remember saying, there's going to be a time when I'm going to speak as She Recovers. And I didn't know how it was going to happen. I didn't know Dawn and Taryn. And when I showed up at She Recovers for LA, I was one of probably 10 African Americans in the room. It was a new experience for me, and I was extremely vulnerable. But I remember just saying to myself, next year or the year after that or whenever, I'm going to speak at one of these events. And I started planning for it. I don't think I've ever told Dawn this, but I started planning for it. I started thinking about, what am I going to talk about, and who's going to listen to me, and who's going to be there. And lo and behold, in 2019, I actually was able to have a conversation with them, and I'm extremely grateful. I'm extremely grateful for you 68 participants that are here today. I always ask when I'm asked to speak, I always ask my creator to get me out of the way, to push me aside so that someone can hear what they need to hear. And somebody in this room needs to hear that they can start doing what they really, really, really want to do. That they can pivot. You can change. Life doesn't have to remain the way that it is. Thank you.
We talk about the direction that we want to go in, but we just talk and talk and we don't really do it. And I've been doing that in my own life. I've been talking about wanting to write and wanting to primarily write, wanting to focus mostly on my writing and on developing, kind of content, those types of things. And that's really what I want to do. And that means stepping back from some other responsibilities that I have in the foundation and elsewhere in my life. How do we start walking the talk when there's so many different variables in place? Like when it's not really just up to you to just be able to say, okay, I'm going to do this now. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's something that needs, I'm asking, what is it, the internal piece that you need to kind of pull up and find and embrace and trust, so that you can stop telling yourself the story that now isn't the time, or I just can't, or there's this too much going on, and it's like, how do you let go so that you can move on?
You know, I think that you have to trust your gut. And I think it goes back to understanding that those messages that you get are really as close to divine messages as are possible. You know, we laughed when I mentioned it at the pivot talk back in November, that, you know, Moses had the burning bush. You know, that was his experience. And for us, we probably just get a gut wrenching something that we can't let go of. And talking about it is not doing it. You know, I learned that with Instagram. You know, my first 3 years, I was talking. I was doing my videos and I was posting about stuff and I was giving quotes and, you know, long captions, and it felt like work because it was exhausting. But I really wasn't going anywhere. I really wasn't doing anything. And it wasn't until I said, okay, this is what I want to do. What does doing look like? Right? And it starts looking like the action piece of it. And so the action of Served was actually putting on, you know, different workshops and actually going out and having engaging conversations with other people and creating holistic spaces. That was the work. I had been talking about the work, but the work was actually doing it. And so I think the messages that you get, you just have to hone in on those. And then you start walking in the direction of those messages. And when I mean walking, I mean really leaning in to the messages that you're getting.
I like that. You know, what I've been doing is I'm waiting for that thing to happen outside of me. I have a book proposal right now being considered for publication, and I'm waiting for that to kind of come back and tell me that, okay, now it really is time because you've got a book deal, let's do this. But quite frankly, if that book deal didn't come through for some reason, I still have to write that book. You know, there are other publishers out there. I don't have to go with one of the top 5 in North America. I can go down this, you know what I mean? So I wrote down, what does doing it look like? Like, what are the action steps? And these are things that we all know from being in recovery, right, Shari? I mean, it's the same thing. It's even every topic that we cover on Mental Health Monday or even on our gatherings, everything is it's all enmeshed and it's all kind of related. The other night, I can't remember who was leading last week. It wasn't me, I don't think. Somebody was leading one of the gatherings in the discussion. We were talking about the difference between letting go and surrendering. You know, that's just kind of, I think for me, it is about, what does doing it look like? Like, what are the action steps? And I don't know why, this is blowing my mind here this morning that I hadn't thought to apply that until you said it to this situation. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Shari Hampton and sometimes Kathy Robbins are my higher power. I'm just putting it out there. I just admit this every once in a while. I want to talk a little bit about a project that we've been working on with you just for a moment before we open up for Q&A and comments, because I can see from the richness of the comments that people want to share about vulnerability and also the awarenesses they've had just from listening to you speak. And I just also want to remind you, and I've told you this before, when you speak, and from the moment I've heard you speak, and it really was on a lot of those Instagram videos for a long, long time when you were doing all that talking. There is just something about the way you talk where I just kind of settle into my breath and I really listen. And so that's a remarkable gift that you have, is to in a way demand attention. So in case nobody's told you that recently, I wanted to remind you of that. So one of the projects that we're working on with Shari and also Esther Nicholson, another woman in our community, is something that we've been talking about. Really, it's kind of this in a way. We talked since before LA about diversity in our community and how we were going to invite more women of color, Indigenous women, Black women, brown women into our community. And we talked, and I'm saying we talked, meaning, you know, our team talked a lot about it and listened to what Shari and Esther had to say, and they had some suggestions, but we were all busy doing things like LA, doing things like planning for Miami that's now been postponed, etc. And it wasn't until this year in May, after the unconscionable murder of George Floyd, that we said, enough talk. What are we doing? What are we going to do about this? And so you'll all be hearing more about this, and you've heard a little bit about it here and there, but in September, we're going to have a summit, and it's going to be 3 amazing Black women from our community who are going to be sharing about healing from racism for Black women. Other women will be invited to attend and sit and listen and learn, but the summit is not for white women. It is for Black women by Black women. So we're really excited to tell you more about that in the coming weeks. The other thing that we realized in our own community is that diversity means, you know, you attract people who are diverse into a community. And so for those of you who are familiar with DEI work, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's kind of when an organization looks and says, how diverse are we? How equitable are we? How inclusive are we? And how can we be more of those things? And what came up for us was, there's no point in having a DEI strategy for the She Recovers organization until we've done some of the anti-racism work that we need to do in our own community. And so we started doing a few different things. We've got a book club on right now where we're actually in August, we're reading 3 books that are related to race, and we can drop off some information there. So we're doing the book club, we're doing the summit. Shari and Served Up Sober started this, that's a lot of S's, started this amazing group called Women of Color Get Sober back at the beginning of the pandemic. And a couple of weeks ago, Shari, as a She Recovers coach, as a member of our community, kind of merged her creation into a group that is now called She Recovers Support for Black, Indigenous, and Women of Color. And they meet on Zoom in their own space every Saturday. The group is growing. We're going, you know, Shari's going to grow it even more. It's an amazing offering. And I understand the women in that group are really benefiting and loving it. They have since she started it. The last thing I want to talk about just for a moment brings us to Shari and tapping into her natural skills of speaking and evoking the best in all of us, I think, is one of the things that she does, is that Shari's been training with an anti-racism educator to develop her own anti-racism training. And that anti-racism training is going to be available to our coaches and volunteers as a pilot project. Then we will make it available to our broader community. And then Shari's actually going to be presenting that work in the recovery community. So with treatment centers and other nonprofit organizations that work with people in recovery from all of the things. So it really is very exciting. And I just, you know, I want to tell you all more about it without getting into too much detail here, but I just really want to recognize Shari for the work that she's doing currently as a trainer and educator. She Recovers is really committed to the idea of making a contribution to this conversation in the recovery community where it seems like it's not a big enough topic in our view. And we're really excited to be partnering with Shari to support her to develop that training. So Shari, I know that you're excited to tell everybody all about it in due course as well and to present it, but I did just want to take a moment to let people know that that's coming. We're incredibly proud to be working with you and with Esther. And on the summit, also Valerie St. John, some of you might know her as the creator of 8-Step Recovery. So lots to come. And also Shari, just thank you so much for your work, your continued work with Served Up Sober and the work that you're doing online for women of color. There's just never been a more important time for that support. And you being a leader in that work is amazing. And you also being a leader in our community is something that we don't take lightly. So anything you want to say to that? I said we were going to riff and then I decided, so.
No, I mean, you said it perfectly. I'm always humbled when I get to share this space with you, and just to be a part of the community and to help create safe spaces for us to facilitate sometimes difficult conversations. And that's the main thing I want to do, is to just let everyone know that the space doesn't have to be awkward, that it can be safe, that we're all just kind of walking each other home, you know, and that's really what I'm looking forward to doing, is just dialoguing with one, and yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. So
thank you. I'm going to stop.